What's up, everyone? It's been a little cold, so I've been closing my loft at night. But today is a nicer day, so I'm gonna go ahead and let the birds out. I did get a brand new feeder. I finally got that 3-foot feeder that I was talking about, so I'm gonna throw that in the loft. I'm gonna try to get you guys some videos of the birds flying. Hopefully they perform today. If not, whatever. But go ahead, let them out and see what they can do today. So today I'm going to show you guys how I settle my young birds. This is just how I do it. I know people have their own ways of doing it, but this is the way I do it just because I fly my birds in the open loft. I don't have a kit box or anything for them, so this is just how I do it. So do what works for you, but I'll show you guys how I get my birds settled. So first step of training. Make sure all the birds that you're training are hungry, and make sure they all know when it's feeding time. And by that I mean is that whatever method you use to call your birds in to eat, whether if you whistle, you shake a can of food, or if you wave something in the air just to signal your birds that it's feeding time. Me personally, I like using the can of food, so that's the way I do it. If you find something else that works for you, do it that way. But that's the very first step. Make sure they're hungry and make sure they know when it's feeding time. So once the birds know the feed call, it's time to start placing them outside. Depending on how many birds you're trying to home will determine how big of a cage you should use. You should try to use a cage big enough where the birds won't be fighting all the time and they won't end up hurting each other. But I like to place the cage right in front of the loft door. And like I said, this is the way I do it because I don't have any kit boxes. I have an open loft, so this is just the way I do it. You place the cage in front of the loft, maybe like 6 to 8 feet. You want the birds to be able to see how to get in and out. This process is actually easier if you already have birds that are homed, just so the new birds can get a physical sight of how the birds go in and out through the door. But if you don't have any birds that know your place, it's not too big of a deal. It's just going to take a little longer, but it helps having older birds that already know your place. So I know a lot of people would never let their pigeons walk outside on the ground like this. They would consider it a bad habit. Me personally, I just feel like pigeons feel much more comfortable if they're allowed to walk on the ground. And I also feel like it's much easier for me to call them in if they're allowed to land on the ground first. I feel like birds are hesitant to come inside if they aren't allowed to land on the ground. But that's just based on my experience. You know, other people might have very good luck of trapping their birds from the sky, but me personally, it's much easier if my birds are allowed to land on the ground. I don't allow my birds to be on the ground for more than maybe 10 minutes. I'm just letting them be on the ground right now just so I can show you guys how I like doing things. So once the birds have been outside for at least 30 minutes to an hour, that's when you can start training them on how to go inside. If you do have older birds flying, make sure you trap those birds first. But what I like to do is I'll take the can of food and I'll start shaking it. And the birds should respond right away if they're hungry. They'll start flapping their wings and they'll want to get out of the cage. So what I do next is I just grab the cage. I just bring it right next to the door. I just open it slightly. And most of the times the birds will know that this is their home and they'll be ready to go out. So just pop it open right here. And like you see, they're pretty smart, so they'll go inside by themselves. Sometimes you gotta encourage them, but most of the times they're pretty smart. They'll go inside. And once all the birds go inside, you just close the door and you just feed the birds. And pretty much you just gotta repeat this process depending on how confident you feel about your birds, knowing how to go inside by themselves. I do it 3 to 5 days. If they're really young, I take 3 days to do it. If they're older, I take like 5 days to 7 days. This process also works for older birds too, but that's only if the older birds haven't been flown. But for older birds, I spend at least 2 weeks of doing this process before I actually let them out by themselves. So you do this for how many days you feel confident with, and once you're done with that, on the day where you feel confident that they could go inside by themselves, you do the same process, but instead of bringing the cage to the door and letting them in, you just leave the cage where it usually sits when you're training, and you just pretty much open it and you just watch the birds, and hopefully you train them well enough and they'll just go straight inside because they're hungry and they want to eat, and their first instinct would be to fly straight inside a loft. So once they do that, start doing that, I feel pretty confident. I don't train them the same way the next day anymore, just because I feel like they know what they're doing. So once they get that figured out, I feel like they're pretty much home. The only issue you would have is if there was some kind of hawk attack or just something that really startled the bird and they ended up taking off, then maybe the bird might get lost. But other than that, this is the way I do it, and I feel pretty confident about it. Once they know how to come out of the cage and walk into the loft to eat, then I feel pretty confident that they're settled and they're home pretty well. So that's why I say train your birds young, just because you don't want them to have the strength to fly away. It's okay if you train ones that are slightly older, but I feel like if they have the strength to really fly and they get scared, they're going to take off and they won't be confident enough to come back. So that's how I do it with the young birds and the older birds that haven't been flown. If you're trying to settle birds that are older and have been flown, I think the best technique is to just pluck their wings and just give them 2 months to grow back. You gotta make sure you let the birds go in and out between the loft. That way they know how to go in and out, and by the time their feathers grow back, they'll pretty much be settled and they'll know where their home is, and you won't have to worry about them flying away. So as of now, I don't have too much going on. I'm just trying to settle all the new birds I got the other day. The kit has been really sloppy. I don't know why, but I think it might have something to do with a couple of birds that I've lost. I lost Iran Moon Red Check, and I also lost a silver cock. I got the silver cock from Wayne Strong of Minnesota. That cock wasn't a very good performer, but I kind of felt like maybe it was the leader of the kit, because ever since those 2 birds have been gone, the kit has been really sloppy. They haven't been kitting very well, and they haven't been performing very well. So we'll see if they get any better in these next couple weeks here. So I did have another bird bump really bad. One of my Turner birds up here, that red guy that I've been talking about, that started becoming really deep. I'm not sure what happened. Like I said, I believe I'm feeding the birds right. I feed them the Johnson mix, pretty much 1 tablespoon per bird. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It doesn't look like the bird is molting. I think it's done molting. So I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe it's just a genetic thing, but I'll give it a week or 2 to rest and fly it again and see how it does. If it bumps again, I may have to get rid of it, just because I don't like birds that bump. I don't like seeing my birds get hurt. So we'll see what happens with that guy. Other than that, I have another pair down here. For some reason they decided to lay an egg now when they had the past month to lay an egg. So we'll see if it hatches. I don't know if it's going to hatch or not with this cold weather, but I'll give them a chance. If they hatch, I'll try my best to keep them alive. If not, then it's not a big deal. I got next spring to breed. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any comments, suggestions, or any criticism, leave them in the comments below. If you like my videos, subscribe. If you don't like my videos, give me a thumbs down. Don't matter to me. Like I said, I'm just a newbie. I'm still learning, so this is pretty much what I have going on. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll check you guys out next time.